So tonight's talk is about increasing your odds of success as a hardware startup. And I chose those words carefully, increasing your odds of success. There's no real way of guaranteeing success. Hardware is risky for a reason. It's trite but true that hardware is hard. But there are certain things that you can do that put your thumb on the scale a little bit to give you a little bit of a greater chance of success. So we'll talk about a bunch of things tonight, but first I also want to introduce Nucleus. So on the right you can see vaguely the outline of our hardware device. So Nucleus is what we call an anywhere intercom. So it works over Wi-Fi, and you can instantly, with audio or video, talk to any other Nucleus device or mobile app in the world. So if you think of your typical intercom system, a couple of units in the house, so that we can do that, instantly audio, video, call the kids down for dinner, check on your sleeping baby. But you can also give one to your parents or your elderly grandparents, and it's almost like teleportation. And you press a button, and you instantly, in 0.2 of a second, you're instantly jumped into the room, and you have this instant live view of what's going on in the other room. So it feels like everyone's kind of living in the same house, even if you're thousands of miles away. In fact, last week I was overseas in Asia checking on the manufacturing, and brought a tablet with me. Was able to press a button and talk to my 2-year-old going to sleep. It's something very nice about that. Enough about us. So tonight we're going to talk about a bunch of things. So I'll jump right in. Before that, anyone know what this is? As I hear being mother, this is a grain of salt. I want you all to take a grain of salt because, we are currently manufacturing. We'll be live in a few weeks, but don't take too much advice from someone that hasn't shipped anything quite yet. So the first thing we're going to talk about is KISS. This is a mnemonic that my mother always taught me growing up. When you face a very difficult problem, always remember KISS. Not this KISS, but this KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. So when you're doing hardware, there's a lot of complexity, right? And you have the ability to use off-the-shelf components or the ability to customize things and build them yourselves. Every single component that you customize adds a whole host of complexities. Wherever possible, you want to choose off-the-shelf, standard, versus customizing it, because when you customize it, you're opening yourself to a lot of difficulties. Cost being one. Anything that's mass-produced is going to be a lot cheaper than anything you customize. Time, right? If you buy off the shelf, you buy from the supplier, you can get to your CM very quickly, as opposed to the tooling and tweaking could take months when you customize a component. Interoperability, right? So if you're using something standard and off the shelf, often there's a whole ecosystem built up around it. It makes it easier to swap other components in and out. Supply chain is a big one, right? If you're doing something custom, it could be that there are only certain vendors that have the expertise needed to produce that, and you're limiting yourself to a few suppliers, and which can cause lead time delays, and if that supplier goes out of business or has another large client, Apple comes and asks that supplier to supply for them, you're out of luck. And the final one is the unknown unknowns, right? So you don't know. Like when you're customizing a component, there are things out there that you haven't thought of, that your vendor hasn't thought of, your CM hasn't thought of. You're opening yourself to a potential world of pain. We heard a story recently about a product that shipped with a HD wide-angle camera that also had night vision. For some reason, no one had thought to test the night vision before it went live. So, the first day it was on the market, they found out that when the night vision is on under certain conditions, the IR LEDs, were somewhat focused in and had a glare, and they had to do a recall and place a ring around it. A painful process that would have been saved. They had just used off-the-shelf stuff. So the first one is if you're building hardware, you're probably already your product itself is probably new. Your software might be new. Your use case might be new. As much as possible, try to keep it simple. A second important lesson is that you'll hear a lot, I'm sure it's talked about a lot here, is your BOM, how to keep your BOM down, your bill of materials, the cost of your device. And that's important, and you should focus on it. But what you should focus on nearly as much, if not more, is your cash flow, right? If you are not set up properly, your success can kill you. So if you look at some examples here, so if you assume 20% growth per month and a BOM of $100, so in the first month you're shipping 5,000 units, pretty good start for a startup. You ship 5,000 the first month. It costs you 500,000 to produce. Depending on your terms, sometimes CMs will need half of that up front and half of that upon delivery. It grows pretty quickly. By month 12, you're producing 37,000 a month, which is still, it's good. It's not, you're not crushing it quite yet. 37,000 is still, within the realm, of relatively small as these things go. But you're gonna have to put up, $3.7 million to fund that purchase order, right? As opposed to if you optimize for cash flow, you can work with your CM to get payment terms that are due 30, 60, 90 days after it's delivered. You can work with your other channels to make sure that they pay you before those 30, 60, 90 days, right? And if you do it correctly, you could even have float where you're getting paid before you have to pay your CM, right? So, if you raising venture capital and you have to, fund the inventory, it's a very, very expensive way of funding your inventory versus setting up your payment terms correctly. It funds itself. Another, I guess, maybe more important for hardware than for software actually, is something that a lot of people overlook, which is hiring a BD and sales position early. Crowdfunding for the last couple of years was the way of kind of proving demand and showing to the world and VC community and others that you have demand for your product. It's kind of peaked and we're in a bit of a dip now. For a couple of reasons. First of all, people are very jaded. There's some statistic like 90% of crowdfunding projects either never deliver or deliver 6 months late. So people are jaded by crowdfunding disasters. But also the numbers. Let's say you raise $1 million on a crowdfunding platform. Those numbers are discounted, right? That doesn't prove market adoption. That proves early adopter adoption, right? It's a self-selecting pool. The people that fund crowdfunding campaigns, often fund a lot of crowdfunding campaigns, are not necessarily indicative of the overall mass market. You're going to have to start thinking very early as to ways to prove demand. So we're fortunate. One of my co-founders is a business development sales guy who's very talented. Through a combination, we did a pre-order campaign. Through a combination of that, but also working with channels and structuring things correctly, we didn't rely on just the crowdfunding or the self-hosted pre-order campaign, but through a bunch of different channels, we now have over 25,000 units or $5 million worth of guaranteed sales, and that's just based, or a significant percentage of it is based on the fact that we've signed these deals, even though we have yet to ship a product, right? So hiring someone that's talented and can help you gain that traction early is very helpful because it's a wheel, right? The more traction you have, the more traction you're able to get. Moving on to, I guess, softer topics than just hardware. This is something I think about a lot. At a startup, you're often your nose down, you're in the grind. It's hard to pull up a bit, but when you think about it at a broader level, you have these very, very small windows of opportunity that just appear, and seizing on those windows of opportunity is really what makes the difference between success and failure, right? It's not necessarily optimizing that that line of code or that marketing copy. It's that person you met that said something interesting, like following up with them and grabbing a coffee with them and picking their brain and having them introduce you to someone important, who could land a deal with. That's often what makes the big difference. And then, so there's some practical tips as to what you can do here. So one thing is meeting with people, right? Probably anyone who works in this community is often talking with peers, colleagues, investors, marketers. There's a lot of people out there that are potential to help you. Always optimize for in-person, right? Where possible, you always want to optimize for in-person. Get out behind your desk. It's much easier to send an email. Get out and meet the person. Talking about seize the day, carpe diem. I think the single biggest inflection point in our company history was my co-founder Morley. When he joined, there's someone that tried to connect us to Foxconn, the big manufacturer. That didn't work out. He searched his LinkedIn, found out he knew the head of business development in San Francisco. We set up a phone call, initial phone call, and the goal of the phone call was to get an in-person meeting. We got the in-person meeting. We literally flew to San Francisco, met for 3 hours, and flew right back, right? And we've done this a bunch of times, but that meeting led to Foxconn wanting to be our CM. They invested in our round. That gave us the credibility that landed us a lot of the deals with some of our other channel partners, right? The ability for us to not just say, hey, let's grab a phone call, and next time we're in San Francisco, maybe we'll meet with her. It was, we'll get on a plane, we'll fly there. Maybe we spend a couple $1,000s for nothing, or maybe we change the whole nature of our company. And we've done this other times, and it hasn't panned out. And literally, it was just a waste of a day and a couple $1,000s. But you place enough of those bets, good things happen. So I guess that's highly related to the second point of getting out more. The difference between success and failure is often your network, the people, someone recommends someone else, That's how you hire employees, that's how you find investors, that's how you get press, that's how you get partnerships. It's much easier to sit at your desk and code or write emails or write business plans or PowerPoints or whatever it is that your job function is. It's a lot harder to get out, but it's also what makes the biggest difference. Related to that is putting away the NDAs. Very few people are going to listen to your idea and go home and rip you off, right? And even if they do, good luck to them trying to put in the same amount of blood, sweat, and tears that you're putting in, right? But there is a very good chance that they can help you, right? So being pretty open about what you're doing will usually lead to good things. Finally, the last point here is also related to the fact that people is often what helps. If you have a mailing list and you're collecting email addresses, who's on there? Do you know who's signing up? We have software. We check who's signing up, and anyone that raises a flag, I send a personal email to, asking them what's up, can I help, anything I can do. That's led to some very interesting conversations. Some senior people at some very big companies have been subscribed to our mailing list, and that's led to interesting places. These are all little things that can take you 5 minutes or it's a few days, a year of time, but are literally what the inflection point of your company can be based on. Finally and lastly, so it's a little counterintuitive, right? I mean, like the sweat, the grind, like that's what we do, right? There is no shortcut to success. So I'm not saying we shouldn't work hard. I'm saying we shouldn't work insanely hard, right? This is a famous graph. I mean, I've seen this, but before startups was in consulting, I saw a similar graph in consulting, right? It's a slog, right? It's a marathon. It's not, there's no overnight success. And it's funny, like looking at this, it's also, this is, over a period of a couple of years, but every month and week also follows this progression, right? You have good weeks, you have bad weeks, you have good days, you have bad days, right? Startups are hard, right? And working 18-hour days, 7 days a week, you don't have the emotional fortitude to deal with the ups and downs. Working very hard, very hard, at times extremely hard, great. Make sure you reserve some time for yourself, right? To keep your mental health up, your emotional fortitude, right? The ability to navigate these peaks and valleys and not let it get to you. And particularly if you're running a team, right? You have to be the rock that the rest of your team is reliant upon. So make sure you're taking care of yourself. Which reminds me, and this is the final point, right? Sometimes it's okay to miss business and pleasure. This is a picture I took. I was working from home one day when my 2-year-old came up, out of nowhere wearing a dinosaur costume, right? And I shared it with our team, but it's a funny picture, but it's indicative of how we at Nucleus try to work. Like many of us have families. We all work very hard, but we also make time for families. And it's the important things in life, right? Your family being one of them, that help you get through the day-to-day grind. And just keeping that in mind, remembering what's important in life will actually help you be a better founder, better employee, right? And will help you do better work, right? Because you'll be more prepared. That's it. Thank you very much. Questions, comments? You want to throw rotten tomatoes? Go ahead.
Very well. One question from me. What's next for you guys? What are the next steps you're going to talk about?
Sure. So we are launching our beta program in the next couple of weeks, and we are going live. So August 1st, we'll be in Lowe's, followed shortly by Amazon and our own website. So we're in production now, and you'll see us on store shelves shortly.
Exciting. Final stretch. All right, questions. So you can read the question.
Sure.
How often do you see a situation where there's a value in a failed startup, that all you need is an investor, manager, manufacturer to come in and take it over?
So the question is, do I see value in a failed startup where it could be taken over by an investor, or manufacturer? So I'll first start with the caveat that I have no personal relevant experience here. Back to the grain of salt. I would just say that these things are grinds, right? It's very difficult for someone to do this part-time, right? If someone else is going to come and take it over, they need to be devoting their lives to this. So I imagine it being difficult to take over a failed startup unless they're going to dedicate their entire life to making it successful.
Yes, you talked about the strategy about trying, but maybe you can give us some insight into the thoughts you had about the compromise between selling just hardware and developing a SaaS model for this kind of product.
Great question. So the question is the thinking that went into the differences between developing hardware and a SaaS model and just selling software. So I'll say two things. First of all, there is a recurring software. I mean, the basic communication is free, but we do sell for premium, cloud recording, other software features. I think every good hardware model these days has a associated software model. But the choice between building hardware and software came down to the experience, right? There is Skype and FaceTime inside the house. You can yell, you can text. There are a lot of other complements or substitutes, I would say. But having that premium experience required having a noise canceling microphone, a wide-angle camera, a speakers capable of being heard a room away. Right, we like to think of it, the difference between like an Amazon Echo and Siri, right? Like, why has Echo taken off? Like, it's just a much better experience than taking out your phone, holding on the button, and Siri. So the ability to have that premium experience just sets us apart from just being a pure software play.
Thanks. You mentioned that when you approach Foxconn, and so before you attain that level of scale, are there resources that you think that you could be there in the middle, maybe domestic resources that could help you further and get somewhere, smoothen that curve that you're showing before?
Good question. So the question is, before you hit the level of scale where a Foxconn is typically interested, is there a resources that can help you ramp up? So I can't speak broadly to what everyone does. I know internally what we did is we had a couple of basically handmade prototypes going from like 3D printed, really ugly with like an Android tablet hidden inside it to better and better and better. We worked with some industrial design firms, to be constantly improving it. We had a model maker build like a really high fidelity version of it, and we had a good prototype and we had the specs fully spec'd out. That's when we approached Foxconn, and they're excited. They're out. For those who don't know, they build Apple, Dell, HP, right? their scale is massive, right? But they're always looking for the next big thing, and we're very fortunate that they saw this and thought that this could be one day a big client for them.
One last question.
Can you share some of the thinking that went into deciding whether to do a private pre-sale versus something like Kickstarter, and what ended up making you decide to go one way or the other in the end?
Sure. So the question is the thinking that went into a private pre-sale versus a public crowdfunding or Kickstarter campaign. So a couple of different factors. The foremost was the ability to brand it, right, and own the entire experience, soup to nuts. A lot of the crowdfunding campaign platforms are crowded. They need their branding up in front. We wanted this to be our brand from start to finish. That was a major one. The ability to explain things and the ability to reach to the customers. We had this hunch that our core customers are not the same ones who are the early adopters on a Kickstarter or Indiegogo. And actually, we saw from our pre-sales map, it's probably like the single piece of data I'm like happiest about, like our pre-sales map. I think we hit like 48 states or something like that, and like it's just spread pretty evenly across the country. So we're trying to find people who have never heard of IoT, people who don't know about smart homes, and people who just want to communicate with their families. And we thought that being on a crowdfunding campaign website might confuse that type of consumer.
Great. So the time we have, thank you very much.
Thank you all very much. Thank you.